Clara Morrison's hands were blue when she pounded on the stranger's door. Behind her, 5 children huddled in a broken wagon, the youngest crying from hunger, the oldest trying not to. 17 cents. That's all she had left in this world. The man who opened the door looked at her like she was already dead. Then he spoke 4 words that stopped her heart. Marry me by midnight. No greeting, no sympathy. Just an impossible demand, while the blizzard swallowed everything she'd ever known. If you want to follow Clara's journey from desperation to destiny, stay with me until the end. Please subscribe and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The wagon wheel cracked like a gunshot in the frozen silence. Clara grabbed the seat rail, her knuckles white beneath her threadbare gloves. The whole vehicle lurched sideways, throwing little Grace against Emma's chest. "Mama!" Thomas scrambled to his knees, eyes wide with terror. "Stay still," Clara commanded, her voice sharper than she intended. "Everyone stay still." She climbed down into snow that reached her knees, the cold biting through her worn boots like teeth. The front wheel had split clean through the wooden spokes, scattered across the white ground like broken bones. Henry jumped down beside her. At 10 years old, he was trying so hard to be the man his father never got to teach him to be. "Can we fix it, Mama?" Clara stared at the ruined wheel. 2 years of widowhood had taught her many things, but lying to her children wasn't one of them. "No," she said quietly. "No, we can't." "Then what do we do?" She looked up at the sky. Gray clouds hung low and heavy, promising more snow. The kind of snow that buried people. The kind that didn't give them back until spring. "We walk." "Walk where?" Emma's voice came from the wagon, thin with exhaustion. "Mama Lily can barely keep her eyes open. Grace hasn't stopped shivering for an hour." Clara climbed back up to look at her children. Emma, 12 years old, and carrying burdens no child should carry, held Grace in her lap. The 3-year-old's lips were tinged with blue. Lily, 7 and always fragile, lay curled against the wagon side, her breathing shallow. Thomas sat rigid, trying not to show his fear. And Henry, her firstborn son, standing in the snow like a soldier awaiting orders. "The ranch can't be far," Clara said, though she had no idea if that was true. "The man in town said 8 miles north. We've come at least 6. In this," Emma gestured at the swirling white. "Mama will die out here. We'll die if we stay." The words hung in the frozen air. Clara saw the fear in her daughter's eyes, saw it reflected in the faces of all her children. They'd lost their father. They'd lost their home. They'd lost everything except each other. She would not let them lose that too. "Henry, help me get the little ones bundled." Emma grabbed the food sack and the blankets. "We take only what we can carry." "What about Pa's tools?" Henry's voice cracked. "We can't leave Pa's tools." Clara's heart clenched. William's carpentry tools. The only thing of value they had left. The only piece of him that remained. "We'll come back for them," she said, the lie tasting like ash. "When the storm passes." They wouldn't come back. She knew it. The children knew it. But sometimes lies were the only kindness left to give. It took 20 minutes to bundle the children and salvage what they could. Clara carried Grace on her hip, the child's face pressed into her neck. Emma held Lily's hand, half dragging the exhausted girl through the snow. Henry walked ahead, trying to break a path, while Thomas clung to Clara's coat like a shadow. The wind picked up. Clara had known cold before. Boston winters could be brutal. But this was different. This was a living thing, a hungry thing that wanted to swallow them whole. "Mama, I can't feel my feet," Thomas whimpered. "Keep walking, sweetheart. Just keep walking." "But Mama..." "Walk, Thomas." Her voice came out harsh, and she saw him flinch. Guilt stabbed through her chest, but she couldn't afford softness now. Softness would kill them. They walked. Minutes became an eternity. The world shrank to nothing but white sky, white ground, white air that burned their lungs with every breath. Clara lost track of direction, lost track of time, lost track of everything except the weight of Grace in her arms and the sound of her children's labored breathing. "Mama." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Mama, I see something." Clara looked up. Through the swirling snow, a shape emerged, dark against the white. A building, a house. "Thank God," she breathed. "Thank God." She pushed forward with renewed strength, her children stumbling behind her. The house grew clearer, a solid 2-story structure, smoke rising from the chimney, a barn nearby, a fence half buried in snow. A ranch. Someone lived here, someone with a fire. Clara reached the porch and pounded on the door with her free hand. "Hello? Please, is anyone there?" Silence. She pounded again. "Please, I have children. We need help." The door swung open. The man who stood there was tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair touched with gray at the temples. A scar ran from the corner of his left eye down to his cheekbone, pale against his weathered skin. His eyes, gray like the winter sky, swept over Clara and her children with an expression she couldn't read. "Please," Clara gasped. "Our wagon broke. My children are freezing. I'll pay, I'll work, I'll do anything." "How many?" His voice was low, flat. Not cruel, but not kind either. "What?" "Children. How many you got?" "5, 3 girls, 2 boys. Please, sir, my youngest isn't well." The man stepped aside. "Get in." Clara didn't hesitate. She pushed past him into warmth that hit her like a physical force. The children tumbled in after her, Emma half carrying Lily Henry, supporting Thomas. "By the fire," the man said. "All of you, now." They obeyed without question. Clara lowered Grace onto a worn sofa near the hearth, her hands shaking as she unwrapped the child's frozen blankets. Grace's eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. "She needs to warm up slow," the man said. He knelt beside Clara, his movements efficient as he began rubbing Grace's hands between his own. Too fast, and her heart could stop. Clara looked at him. "You know medicine?" "I know cold." Emma appeared with Lily, both girls shivering violently. Henry and Thomas stood near the fire, their young faces pale and frightened. "I'll make coffee," the man said, rising. "Hot food, too. Don't let them sleep yet. Keep them talking, keep them moving until they warm through." He disappeared into another room. Clara heard the clatter of pots, the pump of water. "Mama," Emma whispered. "Who is he?" "I don't know, baby." "Is he going to help us?" Clara looked around the room. Simple furniture well maintained, books on a shelf, a rifle mounted above the fireplace. No photographs, no decorations. A house that was clean but not lived in. Not really. "I think so," she said. "I hope so." The man returned with cups of hot coffee, pressing one into Clara's frozen hands. He moved among her children with surprising gentleness, helping Henry remove his ice-crusted boots, wrapping Lily in a thick blanket from a chest near the wall. "Drink," he told Thomas, offering a cup of warm milk. Small sips. Thomas obeyed, his eyes never leaving the stranger's scarred face. When everyone was settled, the man finally looked at Clara directly. "Name's Josiah Blackwood," he said. "This is my ranch. What are you doing out in a blizzard with 5 young ones?" Clara set down her coffee cup, her hands still trembling. "I'm Clara Morrison, widow. We came west from Denver 3 days ago. I heard there was work housekeeper position at a ranch north of Silver Falls." "That's Harrington's place, 20 miles east of here." 20 miles. In the wrong direction. Clara closed her eyes. "The man in town. He said north." "Tom Wheeler. He's a drunk. Couldn't tell north from south on a clear day, much less in a storm." "We didn't know." Clara's voice broke. "We didn't know anyone. My husband died 2 years ago. Consumption. We've been trying to survive ever since." Josiah said nothing, just watched her with those unreadable gray eyes. "I can work," Clara pressed on. "I can cook, clean, keep accounts. I managed a boarding house back in Boston before we moved west. I'm strong. I'm capable. If you could just let us stay until the storm passes, I'll find a way to repay. The storm won't pass for 3 days, maybe more. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. 3 days. Worst blizzard in 20 years, they're saying. Josiah crossed his arms over his chest. Even after it clears, the roads will be impassable for a week. Your wagon's done. You've got no horse strong enough to pull through drifts this deep. Then we'll wait. We'll stay out of your way. I'll earn our keep, I promise. Mama. Emma's voice cut through. What's he saying? Are we trapped here? Clara looked at her daughter, at all her children watching her with the same desperate hope she felt crumbling in her own chest. We're safe here, she said carefully. Mr. Blackwood is being very kind. I'm not kind. Josiah's voice was flat, not angry but final. I'm not kind and I'm not charitable. I don't take in strays and I don't run a boarding house. Clara felt her chest tighten. Then, what, you'll turn us out into that? She pointed at the window where the snow was falling so thick you couldn't see the barn 20 feet away. I didn't say that. Then what are you saying, Mr. Blackwood? He was silent for a long moment. Clara watched his jaw work, watched something shift behind those cold gray eyes. I have a proposition, he said finally. One that solves your problem and mine. What kind of proposition? Josiah walked to the window, his back to her. When he spoke, his voice was quieter, rougher. My father built this ranch 50 years ago, worked himself half to death making it profitable. When he died, he left it to me with a condition I've spent 10 years ignoring. What condition? The ranch has to have a family living on it. A real family. Husband, wife, children. If I can't prove continuous family occupancy by the end of this year, the land reverts to the territorial government. He turned to face her. That deadline is in 3 months. Clara frowned. I don't understand. Why would your father? Because he hated me. The words were simple, brutal. He blamed me for my mother's death. She died birthing me. He never forgave me for surviving when she didn't. The room fell silent. Even the children seemed to hold their breath. He wanted me to fail, Josiah continued. Wanted me to spend my whole life building something only to lose it all because I couldn't do the one thing he never taught me how to do. A bitter smile twisted his scarred face. Find someone willing to put up with me. Clara's mouth had gone dry. Mr. Blackwood, what exactly are you proposing? He looked at her. Really looked at her as if measuring her worth down to the bone. Marry me. The words hit Clara like a slap. What? Marry me. Tonight before the storm makes it impossible to reach town. Reverend Stone keeps late hours. He'll perform the ceremony if I ask. You can't be serious. I'm always serious, Mrs. Morrison. It's one of my many flaws. Clara stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her coffee. You're asking me to marry a complete stranger. You were willing to work for a stranger. Live under a stranger's roof. Trust your children to a stranger's mercy. Josiah's voice was calm, reasonable. How is marriage any different? Marriage is, Clara sputtered. Marriage is sacred. It's a commitment before God. It's a legal contract, nothing more. I have children, Mr. Blackwood. I noticed. He glanced at her 5 young ones huddled together on his sofa. 5 of them, 3 girls, 2 boys. I was paying attention. And you think I would drag them into some sham marriage with a man I don't know? I think you'd do whatever it takes to keep them alive. Josiah stepped closer, his voice dropping. I've seen that look in your eyes, Mrs. Morrison. The look of a mother who's run out of options. You'd walk through fire for those children. You'd lie, cheat, steal. You'd sell your soul if it meant they'd survive another day. Clara's hands were shaking. You don't know anything about me. I know you're desperate. I know you're proud. I know you've got 17 cents in your pocket and nowhere to go. She flinched. He'd noticed her counting her coins earlier, her careful inventory of exactly how little she had left. I also know, Josiah continued, his voice softening just slightly, that you're braver than you think you are. You walked through a blizzard with 5 children rather than give up. That takes a certain kind of courage. Or a certain kind of stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. Clara turned away from him, her mind racing. This was madness. Complete madness. She couldn't marry a stranger. She couldn't bind herself to a man she'd known for less than an hour. But what choice did she have? She looked at her children. At Emma, who'd been carrying adult burdens since she was 10. At Henry, trying so hard to fill his father's shoes. At Lily, who needed medicine they couldn't afford. At Thomas, who still cried for his papa in his sleep. At Grace, so small and fragile. They needed shelter, food, safety. Things Clara couldn't give them on her own. What would this arrangement look like? She heard herself ask. Josiah let out a breath, and she realized he'd been holding it. You'd be my wife in name. You'd run the household, help with the books if you can cipher. I'd provide room, board, and wages, $20 a month for your personal use. And the other aspects of marriage. Separate rooms. I won't touch you unless you want me to, and I don't expect you ever will. His voice was matter of fact. I'm not looking for a wife, Mrs. Morrison. I'm looking for a solution. You happen to be one. And my children. They'd live here. Go to school in town when the weather permits. Be fed, clothed, educated. Josiah paused. They'd be safe. Safe. The word wrapped around Clara's heart and squeezed. What happens after 3 months? She asked. When your deadline is passed? Then we reassess. If you want to stay, you stay. If you want to leave, I'll give you enough money to start over somewhere else. Either way, you'll have options you don't have now. Clara closed her eyes. She thought of William, of the promises they'd made on their wedding day. Love, honor, cherish. Those words had meant something. This was different. This was survival. But William was dead. His promises couldn't keep her children warm. His love couldn't put food in their bellies. Mama. She turned. Emma was watching her, understanding dawning in her young eyes. What's he asking, Mama? Clara walked to her daughter, knelt before her. He's offering us a home, Emma. A place to stay through the winter. In exchange for what? Clara couldn't lie. Not to Emma. Not about this. In exchange for marrying him. Emma's face went pale. Marry him? But you don't know him. You don't love him. No, I don't. Then how can you? Because I love you. Clara took her daughter's hands. I love all of you. And if marrying a stranger means keeping you safe, keeping you fed, keeping you alive, then I'll do it. Without hesitation. Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks. Pa wouldn't want this. Pa wanted us to survive. Clara's voice cracked. He made me promise, Emma. On his deathbed, he made me promise to do whatever it took to keep our family together. This is what it takes. Henry stepped forward, his young face hard with anger. We don't need him, Mama. I can work. I can take care of us. You're 10 years old, Henry. I'm strong. Pa taught me carpentry. I can. You can't. Clara pulled him close, feeling his small body tremble with emotion. Not yet. Someday you will. But right now, right here in the middle of a blizzard, with no money and no food and nowhere to go, we need help. And this man is offering it. He's offering a cage. He's offering a chance. Clara released her son and stood, turning back to Josiah. He'd watched the whole exchange in silence, his expression unreadable. I have conditions, she said. Name them. First, my children are treated with respect. They're not servants. They're not burdens. They're my family. Agreed. Second, I maintain control of household decisions. If we're to make this work, I need authority to run things properly. Agreed. Third, You give me your word that you will never under any circumstances harm my children. If you raise a hand to them, I will find a way to destroy you. I don't care how. I don't care what it costs me. Do you understand?" Josiah's eyes flickered with something that might have been respect. "I don't hurt children, Mrs. Morrison. Ever." "Then we understand each other." She extended her hand. He looked at it for a moment, then took it. His grip was firm, his palm calloused from years of hard work. "One more thing," Josiah said. "The ceremony needs to happen tonight. The storm's getting worse, and if we wait until morning, we won't make it to town. Tonight." Clara's stomach lurched. "But I know it's fast, but every hour we delay is an hour closer to being snowed in. Reverend Stone's only 3 miles east. If we leave now, we can make it and back before midnight." Clara looked at her children. At the warmth of the fire, the solid walls around them. "What about them? I can't leave them alone. I've got a ranch hand, old Ezekiel. Lives in the bunkhouse. He can watch them for a few hours. He's good with young ones, raised 4 of his own before his wife passed." Clara hesitated, leaving her children with another stranger in a strange house while she went to marry a third stranger. Every instinct screamed against it, but her instincts had led her into a blizzard with a broken wagon. Perhaps it was time to try a different approach. "Emma," she said, "I need you to watch your brothers and sisters. Can you do that?" Emma's jaw set with determination. "Yes, Mama." "Keep them by the fire. Don't let Thomas wander. Make sure Grace stays warm." "I know, Mama. I know what to do." Of course she did. She'd been doing it for 2 years. Clara kissed each of her children. Emma's forehead, Henry's cheek, Lily's cold hands, Thomas's mess of hair, Grace's tiny nose. Then she turned to Josiah. "Let's go," she said, "before I change my mind." The ride to town was brutal. Josiah had a covered wagon sturdier than Clara's ruined one, pulled by 2 draft horses that pushed through the snow like they were born for it. Even so, the wind threatened to tip them over twice, and Clara couldn't see more than 5 feet in any direction. They didn't speak. There was nothing to say. They were 2 desperate people making a desperate bargain, and words would only complicate things. Reverend Elijah Stone opened his door with a lantern in one hand and a Bible in the other, as if he'd been expecting them. "Josiah Blackwood," he said. "Wasn't sure I'd see you before the deadline." "Neither was I." Stone looked at Clara, his kind eyes taking in her worn clothes, her exhausted face, the ring of dried tears on her cheeks. "Ma'am," he said gently, "do you know what you're agreeing to?" "I do." "And you're doing this of your own free will? No coercion?" Clara almost laughed. Her whole life was coercion. Now, the coercion of poverty, of circumstance, of a world that didn't care whether she and her children lived or died. "I'm doing this because I choose to," she said. "That's as free as we'll get." Stone nodded slowly. "Then come in, both of you. Let's get this done before the storm gets any worse." The ceremony was quick. A few words, a few prayers, the signing of a license that would change Clara's name from Morrison to Blackwood. Josiah produced a simple gold band from his pocket. "My mother's," he said quietly, and slid it onto Clara's finger. "You may kiss the bride," Stone said. They looked at each other. Josiah raised an eyebrow, a silent question. Clara shook her head slightly. "Not yet, maybe not ever." He nodded understanding and simply took her hand instead. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood," Stone said. "May you find what you're looking for in this union." Clara wondered what that could possibly be. The ride back was quieter, the storm beginning to settle into a steady snowfall rather than a howling fury. Clara sat beside her new husband, the word felt foreign on her tongue, and watched the white world pass by. "Why didn't you find someone else?" she asked suddenly. "You've had 10 years. Why wait until the last moment?" Josiah was silent for a long moment. "I tried. A few times." "What happened?" "They met me." Clara turned to look at him. His scarred face was hard closed off. But something in his voice spoke of old wounds, old rejections. The scar bothers them. The scar's just the outside. He flicked the reins, not meeting her eyes. I'm not an easy man, Mrs. Blackwood. I don't know how to make small talk. I don't know how to smile when I don't mean it. I say what I think, and what I think usually isn't what people want to hear. That sounds honest. Honest men die alone in Montana. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. My father was honest too. Look where it got him. They pulled up to the ranch as the clock in Reverend Stone's parlor had struck 11. Nearly midnight. Nearly the end of everything and the beginning of something new. The house was warm when they entered, the fire still burning bright. Old Ezekiel, a grizzled man with kind eyes, sat in a chair near the hearth, while Clara's children slept in a pile of blankets on the floor. All quiet, Ezekiel reported. Little one fussed for a bit, but the oldest sang her to sleep. Good girl, that one. Thank you. Clara said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for watching them. Ezekiel nodded and rose, tipping his hat to her. Ma'am, welcome to Blackwood Ranch. When he was gone, Clara stood looking at her sleeping children. Emma had curled protectively around Grace. Henry lay with his arm thrown over Thomas. Lily slept apart, her breathing easier now that she was warm. Her family. Safe. Fed. Sheltered. She'd married a stranger to make it happen. I'll show you to your room, Josiah said quietly. We can figure out the rest in the morning. Clara nodded, too exhausted for words. He led her upstairs to a room with a solid bed, clean sheets, and a window that looked out over snow-covered fields. It was simple but comfortable. More comfortable than anywhere she'd slept in months. My room's across the hall, Josiah said from the doorway. If you need anything, I know where to find you. He hesitated, as if wanting to say something more. Then he simply nodded and closed the door behind him. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing her coat, still wearing her new gold ring. She looked down at the band, watched it catch the lamplight. She was Clara Blackwood now, wife of a stranger, mistress of a ranch she'd never seen in daylight. Tomorrow she would figure out what that meant. Tonight she was simply grateful to be alive. She lay down on the bed without undressing, pulled the quilt over herself, and let the exhaustion finally take her. Her last thought before sleep claimed her was of her children, warm and safe downstairs. Whatever came next, that was enough. That was everything. For a moment she didn't know where she was. The bed was too soft. The room was too warm. The quilt smelled of cedar and something else, something masculine that didn't belong to William. Then memory crashed back like a wave. The blizzard, the broken wagon, the stranger's door, the impossible proposal. She looked down at her left hand. The gold band caught the pale morning light streaming through the frost-covered window. She was married. Again. To a man whose face she could barely remember in the haze of last night's exhaustion. Clara pushed herself up, every muscle protesting. She'd slept in her clothes, too tired to care about propriety. Now she felt rumpled and dirty, and completely unprepared to face whatever waited downstairs. But her children were down there, and a stranger who was now legally her husband. She straightened her dress as best she could, pinned back her hair with trembling fingers, and opened the door. The smell of coffee hit her first. Then bacon. Then the sound of Thomas laughing, actually laughing for the first time in weeks. Clara descended the stairs slowly, her hand trailing along the rough wooden railing. The main room came into view, and she stopped on the bottom step, frozen by the scene before her. Josiah Blackwood stood at the stove, a spatula in one hand, while Grace, tiny, fragile Grace, sat on his shoulders, her small fingers tangled in his dark hair. Thomas was setting the table with exaggerated care, his tongue poking out in concentration. Even Emma looked almost relaxed, helping Lily into a chair near the fire. Only Henry stood apart, his arms crossed, his young face dark with suspicion. Josiah noticed Clara first. Something flickered in his gray eyes, surprise maybe, or self-consciousness at being caught in such a domestic moment. "Mama!" Grace spotted her and stretched out her arms. "Up, man, give me ride. I see that." Clara crossed to take her daughter, but Grace clung tighter to Josiah's hair. "No, stay up." "Grace, that's not polite." "She's fine." Josiah's voice was gruff, but he reached up to steady the child with one hand. "Keeps her out of trouble while I cook." "You cook?" "Someone had to. You were dead to the world, and I figured your young ones needed feeding." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. She'd slept while her children were awake and hungry, leaving them to the mercy of a stranger. What kind of mother did that? Don't. Josiah's voice was quiet, meant only for her. "You walked through a blizzard yesterday. You earned the rest. I should have been here. You're here now." He turned back to the stove. "Sit down. Breakfast is almost ready." Clara sat feeling off balance and strangely useless. She was accustomed to being in charge, to managing everything herself. Having someone else take control, even temporarily, felt like wearing shoes on the wrong feet. Emma slid into the chair beside her. "Are you all right, Mama?" "I'm fine, sweetheart." "You don't look fine. You look like you're about to cry." Clara blinked hard. "I'm just tired." "Liar." Emma's voice was gentle, not accusatory. "It's strange, isn't it? Being here? Being married to him." "Yes." Clara took her daughter's hand under the table. "But we'll figure it out. We always do." Josiah served breakfast with the same efficient movements Clara had noticed last night. Bacon, eggs, biscuits with honey. Simple fare, but more food than her children had seen in weeks. They fell on it like starving wolves' manners forgotten in the face of real hunger. Only Henry held back, picking at his plate with deliberate slowness. "Something wrong with the food?" Josiah asked. "No, sir." "Then eat. You're skin and bones." Henry's jaw tightened. "I ain't hungry." "Henry." Clara's voice carried a warning. "It's fine." Josiah settled into his own chair. Grace finally surrendered to Clara's lap. "Boy's got a right to be cautious. Strange man shows up, marries his mama without so much as a courtship. I'd be suspicious too." Henry looked up, surprise flickering across his face. He hadn't expected understanding. "But here's the thing, son." Josiah met Henry's eyes directly, man to man. "Your mama made a choice last night. A hard one. She did it to protect you and your brother and sisters. You can be angry about that if you want. But don't take it out on her. She's carrying enough without your resentment adding to the load." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Then Henry picked up his fork and began to eat. Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. After breakfast, Josiah pushed back from the table. "Storms let up some. I need to check the livestock, see what damage the wind did to the fences." "I can help." Henry stood quickly. "I'm good with animals. Pa taught me, no." The word was flat final. Henry's face crumpled. "Storm's still dangerous." Josiah continued pulling on his heavy coat. "Drifts can swallow a boy your size without warning. You stay inside. Help your mama get settled." "But..." "I said no." Henry sat back down, his expression murderous. Josiah glanced at Clara. "I'll be back by midday. Old Ezekiel's in the bunkhouse if you need anything." Then he was gone, the door closing behind him with a solid thunk. "I hate him," Henry muttered. "No, you don't." Clara began clearing the dishes. "You don't know him well enough to hate him. He treats me like a baby. He's trying to keep you safe." "I don't need him to keep me safe. I kept us safe for 2 years after Pa died." Clara set down the plates, knelt before her son, took his angry face in her hands. "Henry William Morrison, look at me." He looked, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You did keep us safe," Clara said softly. "You worked so hard. Carried burdens no 10-year-old should carry. Your father would be proud of you." "Then why'd you marry him? Why'd you let a stranger take over?" Because even heroes need help sometimes. Clara brushed the hair from his forehead. Asking for help isn't weakness, Henry. It's wisdom. Your father knew that. He married me because he knew he couldn't build a life alone. There's no shame in needing people. I don't need him. Maybe not, but I do. And your sisters do. Can you accept that? For their sake, if not for yours. Henry was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. Good boy. Clara kissed his forehead. Now help Emma with the dishes. I need to check on Lily. Lily had barely touched her breakfast. She sat by the fire, now wrapped in a blanket, her cheeks flushed with more than warmth. Clara pressed her hand to her daughter's forehead and felt her heart sink. Mama, I don't feel good. I know, sweetheart. I know. The fever had been coming for days. Clara had seen the signs, had prayed. It was just exhaustion from the journey. But prayers didn't cure illness. Prayers didn't bring down temperatures or clear congested lungs. Emma, bring me the bag I packed, the small one with the medicines. Emma brought the bag. Clara rummaged through it, finding the tiny bottle of willow bark tonic she'd rationed so carefully over the past months. Less than a quarter left. Enough for maybe 2 doses. She measured out a spoonful, coaxed Lily to swallow it. Is she gonna be okay, Mama? Thomas had appeared at her elbow, his small face pinched with worry. She's going to be fine, just a little fever. Rest and warmth will fix it. Another lie. Clara was becoming an expert at them. The morning passed slowly. Clara explored the house, finding it larger than she'd expected. 4 bedrooms upstairs, a proper kitchen, a study lined with books. Everything was clean, but impersonal, like a house waiting to become a home. She set the children to tasks, trying to establish routine. Emma helped with the laundry they'd brought from the wagon. Henry sulked by the window, watching for Josiah's return. Thomas and Grace played with a set of wooden blocks they'd found in a chest, old, worn smooth by generations of small hands. And Lily grew worse. By the time Josiah returned at noon, stamping snow from his boots, Lily was shivering despite 3 blankets and a roaring fire. What's wrong? He saw Clara's face and crossed the room in 3 strides. The girl? Fever. It's been building for days, but the cold made it worse. Clara didn't bother hiding her fear. I don't have enough medicine. I don't have the right medicine. Josiah knelt beside Lily, pressed his hand to her forehead the way Clara had done. His jaw tightened. She needs a doctor. The storm has let up enough. He was already rising, reaching for his coat. There's a doctor in Silver Falls. I can make it there and back by nightfall if I push hard. You can't go out in that. The drifts. I know the land. I've ridden through worse. Josiah. It was the first time she'd used his name. It stopped him at the door. Why? You don't know her. You don't owe her anything. He looked back at Clara, at the sick child, at the 4 other children watching with wide, frightened eyes. She's under my roof now, he said simply. That makes her mine to protect. Then he was gone. Clara sat by Lily's side, counting the minutes, straining to hear hoofbeats that never came. The children drifted around her like satellites, their fear creating a gravity that pulled them close. He'll come back, won't he? Thomas whispered. Of course he will. What if he doesn't? Clara didn't answer. She didn't have an answer. Hours passed. The light faded. Lily's fever rose. Clara bathed her daughter's face with cool water, coaxed more willow bark tonic down her throat, prayed to every god she could name. Nothing helped. The fever kept climbing. Mama! Emma's voice was tight with controlled panic. Mama! She's not waking up properly. Clara looked at her daughter's face, flushed slack, burning with heat, and felt terror squeeze her heart. Lily. Lily, sweetheart, open your eyes. Lily mumbled something, her eyelids fluttering but not opening. Lily. The door burst open. Josiah stumbled in, covered in snow, half frozen. Behind him came another figure, an older man with wire-rimmed spectacles and a black medical bag. Dr. Whitmore. Josiah gasped. From town. Brought him fast as I could. The doctor pushed past Clara, already reaching for Lily. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, checking pulse temperature breathing. Influenza, he pronounced. Advanced but not critical. I've seen worse. He opened his bag, produced bottles and instruments. Clara watched in desperate hope as he worked administering medicines she couldn't name, wrapping Lily in compresses she didn't understand. She'll need watching through the night, Whitmore said. Fever should break by morning if the medicine takes hold. If it doesn't. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I'll watch her. Clara's voice brooked no argument. You'll do no such thing. Josiah had shucked off his frozen coat, was warming his hands by the fire. You haven't eaten since breakfast. Haven't slept properly in days. You collapse and those children have no one. I'm not leaving her. Then I'll stay with you. He met her eyes. Together. Like we agreed. Clara stared at him, this man she'd known for less than a day who'd ridden through a blizzard to save her daughter's life, who was now offering to sit vigil beside her. Why? The word came out broken. Why do you care? Josiah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, My mother died when I was born. Fever took her. My father never forgave me for it, never forgave himself for not being able to save her. He looked at Lily, small and fragile in her nest of blankets. I won't let another child die of fever if I can help it. Not in my house. Not while I'm breathing. Clara's eyes burned. She turned away so he wouldn't see the tears fall. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when she wakes up. They sat together through the long night. The doctor dozed in a chair nearby. The other children slept upstairs, Emma watching over them like a mother hen. And Clara and Josiah kept vigil, their chairs pulled close to Lily's makeshift bed. Somewhere around midnight, Josiah spoke. Tell me about your husband. Clara startled. What? Your husband, the children's father. What was he like? She was quiet for a long moment. William was gentle, kind. He believed the best of everyone, even when they didn't deserve it. Good man, the best. Clara's voice caught. He was a carpenter. Loved working with his hands, making things grow from nothing. He used to say that every piece of wood had a soul, and his job was just to set it free. Sounds like a dreamer. He was. Clara smiled sadly. He dreamed us all the way to Colorado, convinced we'd find our fortune in the West. Found consumption instead. I'm sorry. Don't be. He gave me 10 years of happiness. 5 beautiful children. Most people don't get half that. Josiah nodded slowly. My father wasn't happy a day in his life. Worked this ranch like a man possessed, but never enjoyed any of it. Everything was duty, obligation, survival. Is that what you learned from him? That's all he taught me. Josiah's voice was bitter. Work hard. Trust no one. Expect nothing good because nothing good ever lasts. Clara looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time since they'd met. Saw the loneliness behind the coldness, the hunger behind the distance. That's a terrible way to live. It's the only way I know. Maybe it's time to learn a new way. He met her eyes. Something passed between them. Not romance, not attraction, but something deeper. Recognition, understanding. The acknowledgement of 2 wounded souls finding unexpected shelter in each other. Maybe, he said quietly. Lily stirred. Clara sprang forward. Lily, sweetheart. Lily's eyes opened cloudy and confused, but open. Mama, I'm here, baby. I'm right here. I'm thirsty. Clara laughed, a sound halfway between joy and tears. Of course you are. Let me get you some water. She looked back at Josiah. He was watching Lily with an expression she couldn't read. The fever's breaking, he said. She's going to be all right. How do you know? Because she asked for water instead of crying. A ghost of a smile touched his scarred face. That's a good sign. Means she's fighting. Clara brought water, held the cup to Lily's lips. The girl drank greedily, then fell back against the pillows. Mama, who's that man? Clara looked at Josiah, uncertain how to answer. He answered for her. I'm Josiah. I live here. You're going to stay with me for a while. Are you Mama's friend? Another pause. Then quietly, I'd like to be. Lily nodded, apparently satisfied. Her eyes drifted closed again, but this time it was natural sleep, not fever's unconsciousness. Clara let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in her chest for years. Thank you, she said again. This time, Josiah accepted it. You're welcome. The next few days blurred together in a haze of recovery and adjustment. Lily improved steadily, the doctor's medicines working their magic. The storm finally broke, revealing a world transformed by snow, white drifts piled high against the buildings, the mountains gleaming in the distance like frozen giants. And slowly, carefully, Clara's family began to settle into their new life. It wasn't easy. Nothing about it was easy. Henry remained hostile, viewing Josiah as an intruder in their family. Every attempt the man made to connect was met with sullen silence or outright defiance. I asked him to help me mend a fence, Josiah told Clara one evening, frustration evident in his voice. He looked at me like I'd asked him to commit murder. He's protective of his role. After William died, he appointed himself the man of the family. He doesn't know how to share that. I'm not trying to replace his father. He doesn't know that. All he sees is a stranger who married his mother. Josiah rubbed his face wearily. What am I supposed to do? Be patient. Give him time. Time's the one thing I don't have much of. But Emma surprised them all. She took to ranch life with an enthusiasm no one expected, helping with chores, asking questions about the animals, treating Josiah with cautious respect that gradually warmed into something like acceptance. He's not bad, Mama, she said one night while helping Clara prepare dinner. He's just sad. You can see it in his eyes. You're too observant for your own good. Someone has to be. Emma smiled slightly. Thomas likes him. Grace adores him. Even Lily's coming around since he saved her life. And Henry? Emma's smile faded. Henry wants to be the hero. He doesn't understand that letting someone else help doesn't make him less important. Clara marveled at her daughter's wisdom. 12 years old and already wiser than most adults. Thomas predictably turned every interaction into an adventure. Josiah discovered the boy in the barn one morning, attempting to climb into a horse stall. What in blazes do you think you're doing? Thomas grinned up at him without a trace of guilt. Wanted to pet the horsey. That horsey is a stallion who kicks strangers. I ain't a stranger. Mama married you, so now we're family. Family ain't strangers. Josiah stared at the boy, nonplussed. Then slowly he lifted Thomas out of harm's way and set him on a hay bale. You want to meet the horses proper, I'll introduce you. But you follow my rules, understand? Yes, sir. Don't call me sir. Makes me feel old. What should I call you? Josiah hesitated. Joe. You can call me Joe. Thomas beamed. Okay, Joe. Clara heard about this exchange later from Thomas himself, who couldn't stop talking about the horses, the barn, the way Joe had let him feed an apple to the gentlest mare. He's not scary, Mama. He just looks scary. Inside he's soft like bread. Don't let him hear you say that. Why not? It's true. But it was Grace who truly captured Josiah's heart. The youngest Morrison child had no fear of the scarred rancher. She followed him everywhere, her small hand reaching for his whenever he stood still long enough. She chattered at him constantly, undeterred by his monosyllabic responses. Up, Joe, up. Clara watched Josiah swing her daughter onto his shoulders with an ease that spoke of practice. You're good with her, she said. She doesn't give me much choice. You could tell her no? He looked at Grace, who was happily tangling her fingers in his hair. I've tried. She ignores me. She's 3. Ignoring adults is what they do. She doesn't ignore you. That's different. I'm her mother. And I'm... Josiah trailed off, uncertain. Her Joe, Clara finished softly. Apparently. Something shifted in his expression, something vulnerable and quickly hidden. Kids are strange, he muttered, but Clara noticed that he didn't set Grace down. Not for another hour. On the fourth day, a visitor arrived. Clara heard the hoofbeats, first looked out the window to see a fancy carriage struggling through the snow toward the house. Beside her, Josiah went rigid. "Who is that?" she asked. "Trouble." He moved to the door, his hand unconsciously dropping to where a gun would hang if he were wearing one. "Stay inside. Keep the children away from the windows." Josiah, who? Cornelius Thorne. The name meant nothing to Clara, but Josiah's tone told her everything she needed to know. She gathered the children, moved them upstairs, told Emma to keep them quiet. Then, against Josiah's orders, she crept back down to listen. The front door was open. Josiah stood on the porch, blocking the entrance with his body. And the man facing him. Clara had met wealthy men before. This one dripped money like other men dripped sweat. Fine wool coat, polished boots, a hat that probably cost more than her family had earned in the past year. He was older, gray at the temples, with a smile that didn't reach his cold blue eyes. Blackwood. The man's voice was smooth-cultured. "I heard you'd gotten married. Congratulations." "What do you want, Thorne?" "Just being neighborly. Thought I'd welcome your new bride to the territory." Those blue eyes scanned the house, the property, everything. "Quite a turnaround. 2 weeks ago you were facing losing everything. Now you've got a ready-made family. Very convenient." "My marriage is none of your concern." "Oh, but it is." Thorne stepped closer, his smile sharpening. "You see, I've been waiting 10 years to acquire this property. Your father refused to sell. You refused to sell. But that deadline in the will, that was my opportunity. And now you don't have one. Perhaps." Thorne's gaze drifted to the window where Clara was hiding. She ducked back, heart pounding. "Or perhaps I just need to be more creative." "Is that a threat?" "I don't make threats, Blackwood. I make promises." Thorne tipped his hat. "Give my regards to your lovely wife. And those 5 beautiful children. It would be a shame if anything happened to such a perfect little family." He turned and walked back to his carriage. Josiah stood frozen on the porch until the vehicle disappeared over the ridge. When he came back inside, his face was pale beneath the weathered tan. "Clara." She emerged from her hiding spot. "I heard. He's dangerous. More dangerous than the storm, more dangerous than anything you've faced before." "Who is he?" Josiah moved to the window, staring out at the empty white landscape. "Cornelius Thorne. He owns half the territory, mines, businesses, politicians. He's been trying to buy this ranch for 30 years. The water that runs through our land is the only reliable source in the valley. Control the water, control everything." "What does he want?" "What he's always wanted. To break me. To take what's mine." Josiah turned to face her, his gray eyes hard as winter stone. "He'll come after you. After the children. He'll try to prove our marriage is a fraud. Try to invalidate the homestead claim." Clara felt ice form in her stomach. "Can he do that?" "He can try." Josiah crossed to her, took her hands. The first time he'd touched her since their wedding night. "I won't let him hurt you. Any of you. I swear it." "How do we stop him?" "By being exactly what we claim to be. A real family." He met her eyes, his grip tightening. "Can you do that? Can you make this look real enough to fool Thorne's lawyers, his investigators, anyone he sends to tear us apart?" Clara thought of her children, of the home they'd found, of the man standing before her offering protection she hadn't known she needed until now. "I can do anything," she said, "to keep my family safe." Josiah nodded slowly. "Then we fight. Together." "Together," Clara agreed. She didn't know what that word would come to mean in the days ahead. She didn't know how hard they'd have to fight, how much they'd have to sacrifice. But standing there, her hands in his, she understood one thing with perfect clarity. This wasn't just an arrangement anymore. This was war. Clara was hanging laundry behind the house when she heard Henry shouting. She dropped the wet sheet and ran, her heart already pounding before she understood what was wrong. The chicken coop was in flames. "Get water!" Josiah was already there, throwing snow onto the fire with his bare hands. "Henry, the buckets! Now!" Henry sprinted for the well. Emma appeared with Grace on her hip, her face white with shock. Thomas stood frozen, watching the flames devour the wooden structure they'd helped repair just yesterday. "Get the children inside." Clara grabbed a bucket from Henry, joined Josiah in the desperate fight. They worked for 20 minutes, throwing water and snow until their arms ached and their lungs burned from smoke. When the fire finally died, nothing remained but charred wood and the smell of destruction. And 12 dead chickens. Clara stared at the blackened remains, feeling something cold and hard settle in her chest. "This wasn't an accident," she said. "No." Josiah's voice was flat. "Kerosene, I can smell it. Thorn, his men, he wouldn't dirty his own hands." Clara turned to look at her children huddled together on the porch. Thomas was crying. Emma held Grace so tight the toddler was squirming. And Henry? Henry's face was twisted with rage. "We should have fought back," the boy snarled. "When that man came, we should have..." "Should have what?" Josiah cut him off. "Shot him. Started a war we can't win. At least we'd be doing something. We are doing something. We're surviving." Josiah knelt before Henry, meeting the boy's angry eyes. "Listen to me. Men like Thorn want you to react. They want you to do something stupid so they can use it against you. The smartest thing we can do right now is stay calm and stay together. So we just let him burn our stuff. We let him think he's winning." Josiah's voice dropped. "While we figure out how to beat him for good." Henry's jaw worked. Clara could see the war inside him, the need to act against the wisdom of waiting. "Your father," Josiah said quietly. "Was he a patient man?" Henry blinked, thrown by the question. "Pa? Yeah, he used to say good things take time, like building furniture. Can't rush it or the whole thing falls apart." "Smart man." Josiah straightened. "Honor him by being patient now. Can you do that?" A long pause. Then Henry nodded just once. Clara felt something shift in her chest. Something like hope. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara found Josiah on the porch, staring out at the darkness. "You handled Henry well today." He shrugged. Boy needed to hear the truth. He needed to hear it from someone he respects. Josiah turned to look at her. "He doesn't respect me. He tolerates me." "That's changing." Clara moved to stand beside him. "What you said about his father, that meant something to him." "I meant it." Josiah's voice was rough. "William sounds like he was a good man. Better than most. Better than me." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Compare yourself to a ghost." Clara touched his arm, felt him stiffen under her fingers. "William was my husband. I loved him. But he's gone, and you're here, and that means something too." Josiah was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I don't know how to be what they need." "Neither do I most days." Clara smiled slightly. "But we're figuring it out, together. Isn't that what we agreed? Together." He said the word like he was tasting it. "I've never been good at together." "Then it's time you learned." She went back inside, leaving him alone with the stars. But something had changed between them. Something small, but significant. A crack in the wall he'd built around himself. Clara wasn't sure what would grow through that crack, but she was starting to hope. The second attack came a week later. Clara was in town with Emma buying supplies at the general store when she heard the whispers. "That's her. The one who married Blackwood. 5 children and no money. Desperate if you ask me. I heard she was a saloon girl back east. That's how she knows how to trap a man. Clara's hands tightened on the flour sack. Beside her, Emma had gone rigid. Mama, ignore them. But they're lying. I know, but responding just gives them power. Clara forced herself to walk calmly to the counter to pay for her goods with steady hands. We don't owe anyone explanations. The shopkeeper, a thin woman with mean eyes, took Clara's money without a word. But as Clara turned to leave, the woman spoke. I hope you know what you're doing, Mrs. Blackwood. Men like Josiah, they're not meant for families. His own father knew that. Clara stopped, turned. I don't believe we've met properly, she said, her voice cold. I'm Clara Blackwood, and I'd thank you to keep your opinions about my husband to yourself. I'm just saying. I heard what you were saying. Now hear what I'm saying. Clara stepped closer, her eyes hard. Josiah Blackwood is a good man. He took in my family when we had nowhere else to go. He rode through a blizzard to save my daughter's life. Whatever his father thought of him, he was wrong. The shopkeeper's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Now, Clara continued, I'll be taking my business elsewhere in the future. Good day. She swept out of the store, Emma hurrying behind her. They were halfway down the street when Emma spoke. Mama, that was amazing. That was necessary. Clara's hands were shaking now that the confrontation was over. People talk. We can't stop them. But we don't have to accept their cruelty. Where did those rumors come from? Clara didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both knew. When they returned to the ranch, Josiah met them at the door. His face was grim. What happened? Gossip. Clara pushed past him into the house. Thorne's been spreading stories about me. About us. What kind of stories? The kind designed to make our marriage look like a fraud. Clara set down her packages with more force than necessary. He's trying to discredit us. That's not all. Josiah's voice was tight. I rode out to check the north pasture today. Found 3 of our cattle dead, poisoned. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. Poisoned? Something in the water. I've diverted the stream, but... He shook his head. He's escalating. Chickens, then rumors, now cattle. Each attack bigger than the last. What's next? Josiah didn't answer. He didn't have to. The children. Thorne would come for the children. We need help, Clara said. We can't fight him alone. Who would help us? Thorne owns half the people in this territory. Not all of them. Clara thought of the doctor who'd saved Lily, the reverend who'd married them. There must be others who've suffered under his boot, others who want to see him stopped. Even if there are, they're too scared to act. Then we make them brave. Clara gripped his arm. You said we're fighting. Well, every army needs allies. We need to find ours. Josiah stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like admiration. You really are something, Clara Morrison. Blackwood, she corrected quietly. Clara Blackwood now. The gathering happened 3 nights later. Reverend Stone's church was small, barely big enough for 30 people. But somehow 40 showed up. Ranchers who'd lost land to Thorne's schemes. Miners who'd been cheated out of fair wages. Shopkeepers who'd been forced to pay protection money. Families who'd been driven out of their homes. Clara stood at Josiah's side, her children around her, and watched these broken people file in. Each one carried the same expression, fear, mixed with desperate hope. Thank you all for coming, Josiah said, his voice rough with emotion. I know what you're risking just by being here. We're tired of being scared, a woman called out. Thorne took my husband's business, drove him to drink. I lost everything because of that man. He burned my barn, another voice added. Said it was an accident, but we all know the truth. My boy tried to stand up to his men. They beat him so bad he couldn't walk for a month. Story after story poured out a litany of suffering, of injustice, of crimes that had never been punished. Clara listened with growing horror. "Why hasn't anyone done anything?" she asked. "Because the law belongs to Thorn." An old man near the back spat on the floor. "Sheriff Morgan's in his pocket, so are the judges. You try to fight through proper channels, you end up worse off than before." "Then we don't use proper channels." Clara stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "We document everything. Every attack, every threat, every dirty deal. We write letters to the territorial governor. We contact federal marshals. We make so much noise that Thorn can't silence all of us." "That's dangerous talk, ma'am." "Everything is dangerous when you're fighting a tyrant." Clara looked around the room, meeting eyes that were scared, but listening. "My family came here with nothing. Your neighbor," she gestured to Josiah, "took us in, gave us shelter, protection, a chance at a new life. Thorn wants to take that away, not just from us, but from all of you." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Alone we're easy targets. Together we're a force he can't ignore. I'm asking you to be brave, not reckless brave. Stand with us, and we stand with you." The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Then the old man who'd spat on the floor rose to his feet. "My name's Abraham Tucker. Thorn ruined me 15 years ago. Took my ranch, my livestock, everything but my pride." He looked at Clara with fierce, faded eyes. "I've been waiting a long time for someone to give me a reason to fight back. Reckon you just did." One by one, others stood. The woman whose husband had lost everything. The miner with the beaten son. Farmers, shopkeepers, workers. Broken people choosing to be strong. By the end of the night, they had 32 names on a list. 32 people willing to stand against Cornelius Thorn. It wasn't an army, but it was a start. The ride home was quiet. Emma had fallen asleep against Clara's shoulder. The younger children were bundled in the back of the wagon, unconscious from the late hour. Only Henry sat awake, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Mama," he said quietly. "Yes, sweetheart." "What you did back there, Pa would have been proud." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "You think so?" "He used to say that the bravest thing a person can do is stand up for what's right even when they're scared." Henry looked at her. "You were scared tonight. I could tell. But you stood up anyway." "I had to. For you. For your sisters and brother. For everyone in that room. Is that what being a grown-up is? Being scared but doing stuff anyway?" Clara smiled sadly. "That's exactly what it is, sweetheart." Henry was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I've been mean to Mr. Blackwood. Joe, I mean." "You've been cautious." "That's different." "No, I've been mean." Henry's voice was thick. "He's trying. I can see that. And I keep pushing him away because—" He stopped. Because if I let him in, it feels like I'm forgetting Pa." Clara's heart clenched. She pulled her son close, kissed the top of his head. "Oh, Henry, loving new people doesn't mean forgetting old ones. Your father will always be part of you. Always. But your heart has room for more than one person. That's not betrayal. That's just living." "Is that how you feel about Joe?" Clara glanced at the front of the wagon where Josiah sat with his back to them, pretending not to listen. "I'm learning to feel that way," she said softly. "We both are." Henry nodded slowly. "Maybe I can try to learn too." "That's all anyone can ask, sweetheart. That's all anyone can ask." 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of planning, documenting, building their alliance. 2 weeks of looking over their shoulders, waiting for Thorn's next move. It came on a Sunday afternoon. Clara was teaching Grace her letters by the fire when she heard horses approaching. Not one or two, but many. The thunder of hooves that meant trouble. "Josiah!" He was already at the window, his face pale. "Get the children upstairs. Now." What's happening? Thorne's men. A dozen of them, maybe more. Clara's blood turned to ice. She grabbed Grace, herded the others toward the stairs. Emma, take them to the back bedroom. Bar the door. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Mama, go! The children ran. Clara turned back to Josiah, who was loading a rifle with steady hands. You should go with them, he said. No. Clara, I said no. She grabbed the shotgun from above the fireplace, the one he'd taught her to use last week. We fight together. That's what we agreed. For a moment she thought he would argue. Then he nodded, once respect flickering in his gray eyes. Stay behind me. Don't shoot unless you have to. They moved to the porch together. The riders had stopped 50 yards out, arranged in a loose semicircle. At their center sat Cornelius Thorne, his fine coat absurd against the rough Montana landscape. Blackwood. His voice carried across the distance. We need to talk. We've got nothing to say to each other. I think we do. Thorne dismounted, walking forward alone. His confidence was absolute, the arrogance of a man who'd never been told no. I've been patient with you, more patient than you deserve, but my patience has limits. So does mine. Thorne stopped 20 feet from the porch. His eyes moved to Clara, and she felt the weight of his gaze like a physical touch. Mrs. Blackwood, you've been busy, organizing meetings, spreading dissent. Do you really think a handful of broken farmers can threaten me? I think people are tired of being afraid of you. Fear keeps people alive, my dear. It's a kindness, really. Thorne smiled, and the expression made Clara's skin crawl. I'm offering you one last chance. Leave, take your children and go. I'll even pay for your passage back east. $5,000, more than enough to start over somewhere else. And Josiah? Josiah stays. The ranch stays. That's non-negotiable. Clara felt Josiah tense beside her. She didn't look at him, kept her eyes fixed on Thorne. You want me to abandon my husband. I want you to survive, because if you stay... Thorne's smile widened. Well, I can't be responsible for what happens to people who refuse my generosity. Your generosity killed my chickens, poisoned our cattle, spread lies about my family. I have no idea what you're talking about. Liar. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Thorne's smile didn't waver, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Careful, Mrs. Blackwood. That sharp tongue of yours could get you in trouble. I've been in trouble since the day I was born. Clara raised the shotgun, pointed it at Thorne's chest. Now get off our land. Behind Thorne, his men reached for their weapons. Clara heard the click of a dozen hammers being cocked. You think you can fight all of us? Thorne laughed. You and your broken rancher against my men. Maybe not. Clara's voice was steady, though her hands wanted to shake. But I can definitely shoot you before they shoot me, and I'm betting you don't want to die for a piece of land. The laughter died in Thorne's throat. For a long moment, nobody moved. The wind cut across the yard, carrying the smell of snow and smoke and fear. Then from inside the house came a sound that stopped Clara's heart. Grace's voice, crying. Mama! Mama, help! Clara spun toward the house. The back door burst open, and a man emerged with Grace in his arms. One of Thorne's men must have circled around while they were distracted. Let her go! Clara lunged forward, but Josiah caught her arm. Don't! His voice was tight with controlled fury. That's what he wants. Thorne was smiling again. As I said, Mrs. Blackwood, fear keeps people alive. Now let's have a civilized conversation about your future, shall we? Clara stared at her daughter, her baby, her youngest, screaming and struggling in a stranger's grip, and felt something break inside her. She lowered the shotgun. What do you want? That's better. Thorne brushed imaginary dust from his sleeve. I want you to understand that you have no power here. No allies who won't fold the moment I apply pressure. No resources I can't destroy. You are alone, Mrs. Blackwood. Completely, utterly alone. You're wrong. The new voice came from behind Thorne's men. Clara looked up to see riders emerging from the tree line. Abraham Tucker at their head, rifle raised. Behind him, more of their allies, 15-20 more, arriving every second. Thorne whirled his composure, cracking. "What is this?" "This is what happens when you push people too far." Tucker's voice was hard as iron. "We saw your men riding out. Figured you might try something stupid. You're making a terrible mistake." "No, Thorne. You made the mistake." Tucker rode forward until his horse was nose to nose with Thorne's. "You've been telling us for years that we're alone, that nobody would stand with us if we fought back. Turns out you were lying about that too." Thorne's face had gone gray. For the first time, Clara saw fear flicker in those cold blue eyes. "Release the child," Tucker ordered. "Now." The man holding Grace looked at Thorne for instruction. Thorne hesitated. "Do it," Josiah said quietly, "or I swear to God you'll die before you hit the ground." Grace was released. She ran to Clara sobbing, and Clara caught her up in arms that wouldn't stop trembling. "This isn't over," Thorne said, his voice shaking with rage. "You think numbers matter? I own judges. I own politicians. I can crush all of you." "Maybe," Tucker cut him off. "But today you ride out of here with nothing, and tomorrow we write letters. Every territorial official, every federal marshal, every newspaper editor in the territory. By next week everyone will know exactly who Cornelius Thorne really is. You wouldn't dare. Watch us." For a long moment, Thorne stood frozen. Clara could see him calculating, weighing options, looking for an angle, finding none. "Mount up," he finally snarled at his men. "We're leaving." They rode out in silence, the thunder of hooves gradually fading. Clara watched them go. Grace still sobbing against her shoulder, her whole body trembling with leftover terror. Then Josiah's arms came around them both, and she let herself sag against his strength. "It's over," he said quietly. "Is it? For today?" He pulled back, looked into her eyes. "You were incredible. I was terrified. That's what makes it incredible." Clara laughed, a sound halfway between relief and hysteria. Around them their allies were dismounting, gathering, their faces bright with victory. They'd won this battle. But as Clara looked toward the horizon where Thorne had disappeared, she knew the war wasn't over. Not yet. Not by a long shot. It came sooner than she expected. 3 days later, Emma didn't come home from school. Clara had sent all 5 children to the small schoolhouse in Silver Falls, believing they'd be safe in town, surrounded by witnesses. Henry rode the old mare, the younger children sharing the wagon seat. Emma always walked the last half-mile alone, collecting wildflowers for the kitchen table. But that afternoon only 4 children came through the door. "Where's Emma?" Clara asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Henry's face was ashen. "She wasn't at the schoolhouse when we left. Teacher said she went home early. Headache." "She didn't come home early." The words hung in the air like smoke. Clara was already running before her mind caught up with her body. She burst out the door, nearly colliding with Josiah, who was returning from the barn. "What's wrong?" "Emma, she's missing." Josiah's face went hard as stone. "How long?" "Hours. Maybe since midday. Henry says she left school early, but she never arrived here." Thorne. The name was a curse and a certainty. They searched until dark. Abraham Tucker brought men from town. The Reverend organized prayer circles. Half the valley turned out calling Emma's name until their voices cracked. Nothing. Clara stood in the yard at midnight, wrapped in a coat that couldn't warm the ice in her veins. Her other children were inside, finally asleep after hours of crying. Lily hadn't stopped shaking. Thomas kept asking when Emma was coming back. Grace didn't understand what was happening, which was perhaps the only mercy. And Henry. Henry sat in a corner, his face white and still blaming himself for not watching his sister more carefully. "This is my fault," Clara said when Josiah approached. "I pushed too hard. I made us a target." "You gave people hope. That's not a crime." "It might as well be." Her voice cracked. He has my daughter Josiah, my firstborn, my baby girl who's been carrying adult burdens since she was 10 years old. We'll get her back. How? We don't even know where she is? We'll find out. Josiah gripped her shoulders, forced her to meet his eyes. Listen to me. Thorn took Emma to break you, to make you give up. If you fall apart now, he wins. I don't care about winning. I care about my daughter. Then be strong for her. Be the mother she needs you to be. His voice was fierce. Emma's smart. She's brave. She learned those things from you. She'll survive until we find her. Clara wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly her chest ached. What if we're too late? We won't be. The conviction in his voice was absolute. Clara clung to it like a lifeline. How do you know? Because I won't let it happen. Josiah pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. I won't lose this family. Not now. Not ever. Clara pressed her face into his shoulder and let herself cry. Morning brought an unexpected visitor. Deputy Samuel Creek rode up to the ranch just after dawn, his young face drawn with tension. Clara recognized him from town, barely 25, with honest eyes and a reputation for fairness that set him apart from the corrupt sheriff. Ma'am, Mr. Blackwood. He dismounted, glancing around nervously. We need to talk. Somewhere private. They took him to the study. Sam removed his hat, twisting it in his hands. I know where your daughter is. Clara's heart stopped. Where? Thorn's mine, the abandoned shaft about 5 miles north of his main operation. He's got men guarding her, but not many. He doesn't think anyone knows the location. How do you know this? Sam's jaw tightened. Because I've been watching him, for months, gathering evidence of every dirty deal, every threat, every crime he's committed. He pulled a leather journal from inside his coat. It's all here. Names, dates, witnesses. Enough to put Thorn away for the rest of his natural life. Josiah reached for the journal, then stopped. Why you work for Sheriff Morgan? Morgan works for Thorn. That's why. Sam's eyes were hard with old anger. My father used to own a farm east of here. Thorn wanted the land for his mining operations. When Pa refused to sell, there was a fire. My mother didn't make it out. Clara's hand went to her mouth. Sheriff ruled it an accident. Sam's voice was bitter. Said Pa was careless with the lamp oil. Everyone knew it was a lie, but nobody would speak against Thorn. Pa died 6 months later. Broken heart, they said. I say Thorn killed him too, just slower. So you became a deputy, Josiah said slowly. To get inside. To get justice. Sam straightened. I've been waiting for the right moment. When you folks started organizing, started making noise, I knew it was time. But then Thorn took your girl, and I couldn't wait any longer. Can we trust him? Clara asked Josiah quietly. Ma'am, I understand your suspicion, but I've got nothing to gain by lying to you. If Thorn finds out I've betrayed him, I'm a dead man. Sam met her eyes. Your daughter is running out of time. Thorn sent a message to the territorial governor this morning. He's claiming she was kidnapped by bandits that he's generously offering a reward for her safe return. Once that story takes hold, nobody will believe the truth. Clara looked at Josiah, saw the same calculation in his eyes that she felt in her own chest. What's your plan? Josiah asked. The mine has 2 entrances, main shaft and a ventilation tunnel on the east side. If we approach from the east, we can get in without being seen. I know the guard rotation. There's a window tonight about 2 hours after sunset, when only 2 men will be watching. 2 men against how many of us? You, me, and maybe 2 others. More than that, and we'll be spotted. Sam looked between them. This isn't an army operation. It's a rescue. We get in, get the girl, get out before Thorn even knows we're there. And if something goes wrong, then we improvise. Sam's expression was grim. But I won't lie to you, this is dangerous. There's a chance we don't all come back. Clara stepped forward. I'm going. Both men turned to stare at her. Absolutely not, Josiah said. She's my daughter. And these are my enemies. I won't risk losing you too. You don't get to make that choice for me. Clara's voice was steel. I've followed your lead since the day I arrived. I've trusted you when I had no reason to trust anyone. But this is Emma, my child. I will not sit here waiting while someone else decides her fate. Clara, I'm going Josiah, with your blessing or without it. They stared at each other for a long moment. Clara saw the fear in his eyes, not fear of Thorn, but fear of losing her. And beneath that something deeper, something that looked like love. Then we go together, he said finally. Like we agreed. Clara nodded. Like we agreed. They spent the day preparing. Abraham Tucker would stay at the ranch with the children armed and watchful. Reverend Stone rode to the nearest federal outpost to request help, a long shot, but worth trying. Clara said goodbye to her children one by one. Thomas clung to her legs, crying. Don't go, Mama. Don't leave us too. I'm coming back, sweetheart, and I'm bringing Emma with me. Promise? Promise. Lily was quieter, her eyes too old for her 7 years. Be careful, Mama. Always. Grace didn't understand, but she kissed Clara's cheek and patted her hair like she was the mother and Clara the child. Don't be sad, Mama. It'll be okay. And Henry, her firstborn son, standing rigid by the door, trying so hard to be brave. I should be going with you. You have a more important job. Clara cupped his face in her hands. Protect your brother and sisters. That's what a man does, Henry. He takes care of his family. But, you're the man of the house while I'm gone. Can I count on you? Henry's throat worked. Then he nodded once. That's my boy. She hugged him tight, breathing in the scent of hay and soap and childhood. When she pulled back, his eyes were wet, but he didn't let the tears fall. He was so much like his father, so much like the man William had been teaching him to become. I love you, Clara said. All of you. Never forget that. Then she walked out the door and didn't look back. The ride to the mine took 3 hours. Clara, Josiah, Sam, and Abraham Tucker's son James, a young man with steady hands and a score to settle with Thorn after his father's ranch was burned. They moved in silence, following trails that Sam knew from his years of surveillance. The cold was bitter. Clara's hands went numb inside her gloves, and her breath turned to ice crystals in the air. But she didn't complain, didn't speak. Just kept her eyes on Josiah's back and thought about Emma. Emma, who'd been the first to hold each of her siblings when they were born. Emma, who'd sung lullabies to Grace when Clara was too exhausted to stand. Emma, who'd become a mother herself at 10 years old, sacrificing her childhood to help her family survive. If anything happened to her, Clara pushed the thought away. She couldn't afford doubt. Not tonight. They reached the mine as the moon rose, a cold white eye staring down from a cloudless sky. Sam led them to a rocky outcropping overlooking the east entrance, a dark hole in the hillside barely visible against the snow. 2 guards, Sam whispered. See them? Clara squinted. 2 figures huddled around a small fire, their backs to the entrance. How do we get past them? We don't. Sam pulled a bottle from his saddlebag. Whiskey laced with laudanum. I'll approach alone, say I'm making rounds. They know me. They'll drink. And if they don't, then we do this the hard way. Sam crept down the slope while the others watched. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. One wrong move, one suspicious glance, and the whole plan fell apart. But Sam played his part perfectly. The guards welcomed him with rough laughter, passed the bottle around. Within 15 minutes, both men were slumped against the rocks unconscious. Sam waved them forward. The mine tunnel was dark as a grave. Clara could see nothing beyond the small circle of light from Josiah's lantern. The walls pressed close, wet stone dripping with condensation that ran down her neck like cold fingers. They moved in single file, Sam leading the way. The tunnel twisted and turned, descending deeper into the earth. Clara lost all sense of direction, all awareness of anything beyond the sound of her own breathing and the steady rhythm of footsteps ahead. After what felt like hours, Sam held up a hand. She's just ahead. There's a chamber where they're keeping her. How many guards? Should be one. Thorne's overconfident he didn't expect anyone to find this place. Josiah drew his pistol. Let me go first. No. Clara stepped forward. Let me. Clara. She's terrified. If she sees a man with a gun coming at her, she'll scream. If she sees me... Clara took the lantern from Josiah's hand. Just be ready. She walked forward alone. The chamber opened before her, a small cave carved from the rock, lit by a single oil lamp. A man sat in a wooden chair near the entrance, his rifle across his lap, his head nodding with sleep. And in the corner, bound to a support beam, was Emma. Clara's daughter looked up as the light fell on her face. Her eyes widened first with fear, then with recognition, then with desperate, overwhelming relief. Mama! The whisper carried across the chamber. The guard stirred. Clara moved without thinking. She swung the lantern hard, catching the guard across the temple. He went down with a grunt, his rifle clattering to the stone floor. Then, she was running, falling to her knees beside Emma, tearing at the ropes that bound her daughter's wrists. Mama! Oh God! Mama! I knew you'd come! I knew... Shh, baby, shh. I'm here. You're safe now. The ropes fell away. Emma threw herself into Clara's arms, sobbing against her shoulder. She was thin, trembling, her dress torn and dirty. But she was alive. She was whole. Can you walk? Clara asked. I think so. Mama, there are more of them. Mr. Thorne said he was coming tonight to Mrs. Blackwood. The voice came from the tunnel behind them. Clara spun, pushing Emma behind her. Cornelius Thorne stood at the chamber entrance, a pistol in his hand. Behind him were 4 of his men, their weapons drawn. I must admit, Thorne said, I'm impressed. I didn't think you'd actually find her. Let us go, Thorne. You've lost. Lost. He laughed, the sound echoing off the stone walls. I haven't lost anything. You've just delivered yourself into my hands. A mother killed trying to rescue her kidnapped daughter. It's tragic, really. The kind of story that makes people shake their heads and forget about asking inconvenient questions. Clara felt Emma's fingers dig into her arm, felt the terror radiating from her daughter's body. The deputy is outside, Clara said. He has evidence of everything you've done. If you kill us, it won't save you. Deputy Creek. Thorne smiled. That boy's been playing games since I killed his parents. You think I don't know about his little investigation? I've been letting him gather his evidence, waiting for the right moment to expose him as a liar and a fraud. You're bluffing. Am I? Thorne raised his pistol. I suppose we'll find out. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. But it wasn't Thorne who fired. Josiah emerged from the shadows behind Thorne's men, his pistol smoking. One of the guards went down with a cry, clutching his shoulder. The others whirled, confusion breaking their ranks. Run! Josiah shouted. Clara grabbed Emma's hand and ran. The tunnel was chaos. Gunfire echoed, muzzle flashes lighting the darkness like lightning. Clara couldn't tell who was shooting at whom. She just kept moving, dragging Emma behind her, her lungs burning from the cold air and the desperate sprint. They burst out of the mine entrance into the snow. The unconscious guards were still slumped by their fire. Clara's horse stood where she'd left it, patient and waiting. Get on, she ordered Emma. Ride for the ranch. Don't stop for anything. What about you? I'm going back for Josiah. Mama, no. Go, Emma. Now. Your brothers and sisters need you. Emma hesitated, tears streaming down her face. Then she mounted the horse and kicked it into a gallop, disappearing into the night. Clara turned back toward the mine. More gunshots. A scream. Then silence. She grabbed the rifle from one of the unconscious guards, checked that it was loaded, and walked back into the darkness. The chamber was transformed. 2 of Thorne's men lay motionless on the ground. Sam was slumped against the wall, blood seeping from a wound in his side. James knelt beside him, pressing a cloth to the injury. And in the center of the room, Josiah and Thorn stood facing each other, both bloodied, both armed, both waiting. "It's over, Thorn," Josiah said. "Your men are down. Your secrets are exposed. There's nowhere left to run." "There's always somewhere to run." Thorn's voice was ragged, desperate. "You think this ends with me? I have partners, investors, men in positions of power who need my operation to continue. Then they'll find someone else to do their dirty work. You're making a mistake, Blackwood. Kill me and you become a murderer. Let me go and I'll leave this territory forever. You'll never see me again." Josiah's hand was steady on his pistol. "You kidnapped a child, threatened a family, destroyed lives for your own profit. You don't get to walk away from that. Everyone walks away from something." Thorn's eyes flickered to Clara standing in the tunnel entrance. "Ask your wife. Ask her what she walked away from when she agreed to marry a stranger for convenience." "I walked away from death," Clara said. "You're offering something different." "Am I?" Thorn smiled, bloody teeth gleaming in the lamplight. "You think you've won, but you haven't. Not really. Because even if I hang, the world goes on just the same. Men like me will always exist. And men like your husband, broken, damaged, unlovable, they'll always end up alone." Josiah's face didn't change, but Clara saw the words land, saw the old wounds they tore open. She raised her rifle. "Josiah isn't broken," she said quietly. "He's the best man I've ever known. He saved my family when no one else would. He fought for us when it would have been easier to walk away. He loved my children when he had every reason to hold them at arm's length." She stepped forward, her eyes never leaving Thorn's face. "You want to know what I walked away from? I walked away from fear, from the belief that I had to accept whatever crumbs the world offered. Josiah Blackwood gave me a choice, and I made it. I chose him. I choose him, every day for the rest of my life." How touching. Thorn's sneer was ugly. "And what happens when he disappoints you, when you realize he's just as cold and empty as his father made him?" "Then I'll love him anyway." Clara's voice was clear as winter ice. "That's what marriage means. That's what family means. You wouldn't understand." Thorn lunged. The gunshot cracked through the chamber. Thorn fell, clutching his knee, screaming in agony. Josiah stood over him, pistol still raised. "That's for Emma, and Clara, and everyone else you've ever hurt." He looked at Clara, something vulnerable and wondering in his gray eyes. "You meant that what you said?" Clara lowered her rifle. Every word. The marshals arrived 3 days later. They'd been on their way already, alerted by weeks of letters and documented evidence. Sam's journal proved invaluable, a detailed record of Thorn's crimes that couldn't be ignored or explained away. Cornelius Thorn was arrested along with Sheriff Morgan and a dozen of his men. The territorial governor issued a formal statement condemning the corruption and promising reforms. News spread through the valley like wildfire, and families who'd lived in fear for years finally began to breathe again. Clara watched the marshals ride out with Thorn in chains, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. "It's really over," Emma said, standing beside her. The girl had barely left Clara's side since the rescue, and Clara wasn't inclined to argue. "He's really gone. He's really gone. What happens now?" Clara looked back at the house where her other children were playing in the snow under Josiah's watchful eye. Thomas was building a fort. Grace was trying to eat a snowball. Lily was laughing, actually laughing for the first time in weeks. And Henry was helping Josiah stack firewood, the two of them working in comfortable silence. "Now," Clara said softly, "we live." That night, after the children were asleep, Clara found Josiah on the porch again. But this time she didn't stand beside him. She took his hand, laced her fingers through his, and leaned against his shoulder. "You know," she said, When you asked me to marry you, I thought you were insane." "I was insane." "Maybe," Clara smiled. "But it was the best kind of insanity." Josiah turned to look at her. In the moonlight, his scarred face was almost beautiful. "Clara, what you said in the mine. About choosing me. About loving me anyway. I meant it. I don't know how to be loved." His voice was rough with honesty. "I don't know how to love back. My father never taught me. Nobody ever taught me." "Then we'll learn together." Clara reached up, cupped his face in her hands. "That's what marriage is, Josiah. Two imperfect people refusing to give up on each other." "I'm very imperfect." "So am I." She smiled. "But together, we're something better. Something whole." Josiah closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were bright with emotion. "I love you, Clara Blackwood." The words were simple, almost wondering, like he couldn't quite believe he was saying them. "I love you too." Clara rose on her toes and kissed him, really kissed him for the first time since their wedding night. "Now come inside. Your family's waiting." Josiah's family. The words wrapped around Clara's heart and held tight. She took his hand and led him through the door into warmth and light, and the sounds of children dreaming. Home. Finally, impossibly wonderfully home. The weeks following Thorne's arrest transformed the valley in ways Clara never could have imagined. Families returned to land they'd abandoned. Businesses reopened. People smiled at each other on the streets of Silver Falls, no longer afraid to meet their neighbors' eyes. It was as if the entire territory had been holding its breath for years, and now finally it could exhale. But the changes inside the Blackwood Ranch were even more profound. Clara woke one morning to find Josiah's side of the bed empty. They'd been sharing a room since the night of Thorne's capture, not just sharing, but truly together, learning each other in ways that made Clara blush to remember. The gold band on her finger felt different now, heavier, more real. She found him in the kitchen making breakfast again, but this time he wasn't alone. Henry stood beside him at the stove, concentrating fiercely as Josiah showed him how to flip pancakes. "You're holding the pan too tight," Josiah said. "Relax your wrist. Let the batter do the work." "Like this? Better. Now flip." The pancake sailed through the air and landed perfectly in the center of the pan. Henry's face split into a grin. "I did it." "You did." Josiah clapped a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Your pa teach you to cook." "Some. Mostly eggs and bacon. Mama did the fancy stuff." "Pancakes ain't fancy. They're just patient." Josiah glanced up and saw Clara in the doorway. Something softened in his expression. "Morning." "Morning." Clara crossed to kiss his cheek, then Henry's forehead. "When did this start?" "Henry came down early. Said he wanted to learn." Josiah's voice was carefully casual, but Clara could see the emotion beneath it. "Figured I could use the help." Henry ducked his head, embarrassed by the attention, but he didn't pull away from Josiah's hand on his shoulder. Progress. Real, tangible progress. The other children filtered down over the next hour, drawn by the smell of food and the sound of laughter. Thomas immediately demanded his own pancake flipping lesson. Lily set the table with quiet efficiency. Grace climbed onto her usual perch on Josiah's shoulders, and Emma just watched, a small smile playing at her lips. "What?" Clara asked her eldest daughter. "Nothing." Emma's smile widened. This is nice, isn't it? All of us together." "It is." "I wasn't sure it would be. When we first came here, I thought—" Emma shook her head. "I thought we were just using him, that it was temporary, that eventually we'd leave and go back to being alone. And now—" Emma looked at Josiah, who was patiently teaching Thomas the same pancake flip he'd shown Henry, while Grace drummed her heels against his chest and demanded, "More up." "Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." Clara pulled her daughter close. "Neither can I, sweetheart. Neither can I. The deadline for the homestead claim came and went without fanfare. A new examiner arrived from the territorial office, a serious woman named Margaret Hayes, who'd replaced the corrupt officials Thorne had installed. She walked the property, inspected the buildings, reviewed the documents. Clara and Josiah stood together, their children arrayed behind them like a small army. "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood," Hayes said finally, "I'm pleased to confirm that your homestead claim meets all territorial requirements. The land, including water rights, is officially and permanently yours." Clara felt Josiah's hand tighten on hers. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, his voice rough. Hayes smiled, a rare expression that transformed her stern face. "I've heard what you folks did, standing up to Thorne when everyone else was too scared. This territory owes you a debt. We just wanted to protect our family. That's exactly what makes it admirable." Hayes tucked her papers into her bag. "Good luck to you both. Something tells me you won't need it." After she left, Clara turned to Josiah. "It's really ours now. It's always been ours." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. "The paper just makes it official. Does that mean we can stop worrying?" Josiah laughed, a real laugh, something Clara had rarely heard from him before Thorne's defeat. "I don't think either of us knows how to stop worrying, but maybe we can learn. Together. Always together." Christmas came with the first real joy Clara had felt during the holiday in 3 years. The house was warm, filled with the smell of pine and cinnamon, and the roast that had been cooking since dawn. Josiah had cut down a tree from the North Ridge, the children's first Christmas tree since William died. They decorated it with paper chains and popcorn strings, with ornaments made from scraps of fabric and bits of ribbon. "It's crooked," Thomas announced, staring at the tree with critical 10-year-old eyes. "It's perfect," Clara corrected him. "It's crooked and perfect," Emma said diplomatically. "Like our family." Josiah snorted. "Crooked, huh?" "In the best way." Emma grinned at him. "Pa used to say that the best things in life are a little bent. It's what makes them interesting." Clara felt the familiar pang at the mention of William, but it was softer now, gentler, a wound that had finally begun to heal. "Your pa sounds like he was a wise man," Josiah said quietly. "He was." Henry's voice came from the corner where he'd been pretending not to listen. "He would have liked you, I think, once he got past the scary face." "Henry," Clara admonished. But Josiah just laughed. "Your brother's right. I do have a scary face. Can't help the way God made me." "I don't think you're scary," Grace piped up from her position on the floor, where she was trying to dress a wooden horse in a doll's bonnet. "I think you're pretty." "Pretty," Thomas nearly choked on his cider. "Joe ain't pretty, he's a man. Men can be pretty." Grace was firm. "Mama says so." All eyes turned to Clara, who felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I may have mentioned something along those lines," she admitted. Josiah's expression was unreadable, but his eyes were warm. "Pretty, huh?" "Handsome. I said handsome." "Pretty sure I heard pretty." "Your hearing must be going." "My hearing's fine, Mrs. Blackwood." The children giggled at their bickering, and Clara felt something expand in her chest. This was what she'd been missing for so long. Not just survival, but life. Laughter. Teasing. The ordinary magic of a family being together. That night, after the children were asleep, Clara and Josiah sat by the fire, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "I have something for you," he said. "We agreed no gifts until morning." This couldn't wait. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "I've been holding on to this for weeks, wasn't sure when the right moment would be." Clara opened the box. Inside was a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a pendant shaped like a heart. Inside the heart, engraved in tiny letters, were 7 names: Clara, Emma, Henry, Lily, Thomas, Grace, Josiah. The jeweler in town owed me a favor. Josiah said, his voice rough. Thought you might want something that showed how things are now, how we're all. Clara silenced him with a kiss. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet with tears. It's perfect. You're crying. Happy tears. She laughed, wiping her cheeks. I didn't know I still had those. Josiah took the necklace from the box and fastened it around her neck. The pendant settled against her chest, warm from his hands. I never thought I'd have this, he said quietly. A family. Someone who chose to stay. I'd convinced myself I didn't need it, that I was better off alone. And now I can't imagine going back to that. He cupped her face in his hands. You saved me, Clara. You and your stubborn courage and your 5 wild children. You walked into my life during a blizzard, and you melted everything I'd frozen. You saved us, too. Clara covered his hands with her own. We were broken, desperate, ready to give up. You gave us a reason to keep fighting. I gave you a proposition. You gave us a home. They sat together as the fire burned low, watching the flames dance and flicker. Outside, snow fell softly, blanketing the world in white. Inside, children dreamed of Christmas morning, of presents and laughter, and a future that finally felt safe. And Clara thought about how strange life could be. How a single decision, a desperate yes to an impossible question, could change everything. She'd walked into that blizzard expecting to die. Instead, she'd found a life worth living. Spring arrived slowly, grudgingly, as if Montana was reluctant to release its grip on winter. But eventually, the snow began to melt, revealing green shoots beneath. The creek swelled with snowmelt. Birds returned to the valley, filling the air with songs that Clara hadn't heard in months. And with spring came change. Mama! Emma found her in the garden, where Clara was planting the seeds she'd saved from last year's harvest. Can I talk to you? Of course, sweetheart. Emma sat beside her on the damp earth, heedless of her dress. Deputy Creek came by the school today. Clara's hands stilled. Sam? He wanted to talk to me. About... Emma's cheeks flushed. About calling on me, when I'm old enough. Clara studied her daughter's face. Emma was nearly 13 now, not quite a woman, but no longer entirely a child. The ordeals of the past months had aged her in ways that couldn't be measured. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Emma pulled at a blade of grass. He's kind and brave. He helped save me. Those are good qualities. But I'm not ready. Not yet. Emma looked up at her eyes, searching Clara's face. Is that okay to not be ready? Clara pulled her daughter close. That's more than okay. That's smart. You have time, Emma. All the time in the world. There's no rush to grow up. But you married Joe so fast. You barely knew him. I married Joe because I had no other choice. You do have choices. That's what we fought for, so you could choose your own path. Clara tucked a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. Tell Sam the truth. That you're flattered, but you need time. If he's the man I think he is, he'll wait. Emma nodded slowly. Okay. She hesitated. Mama, do you regret it, marrying Joe so quickly? Clara thought about the question. Really thought about it. I regret the circumstances that forced my hand, she said finally. I regret that I couldn't give you all a more stable childhood, that you had to grow up so fast, that we went through so much pain. She paused. But Joe himself, no. I don't regret him. I don't regret this family we've built. You love him. It wasn't a question. I do. Clara smiled. I really do. Emma hugged her tight. I'm glad, Mama. You deserve to be happy. So do you, sweetheart. So do all of us. Summer brought a different kind of blessing. Clara had suspected for weeks, but she'd been afraid to believe it. Afraid to hope. She'd lost so much already. What if this was another thing that would be taken away? but the signs were unmistakable. The morning sickness, the exhaustion, the way her body was changing in familiar, wonderful ways. She told Josiah on a warm evening in July, sitting on the porch while the children played in the yard. "I'm pregnant." Josiah went very still. "You're pregnant. With a baby. Your baby." Clara laughed at his expression. "Don't look so shocked. It's not like we haven't been enthusiastic." "But I thought you never said—" He shook his head, struggling for words. "Are you sure?" "Very sure. Dr. Whitmore confirmed it yesterday." Josiah stared at her. Then slowly, a smile spread across his scarred face, the widest, most unguarded smile Clara had ever seen from him. "A baby," he breathed. "Our baby. Our baby." Clara took his hand, placed it on her still flat stomach. "Sometime around Christmas, if the doctor's calculations are right." "Christmas." Josiah's voice was wondering. "A Christmas baby." "Are you happy?" "Happy?" He laughed, pulling her into his arms. "Clara, I'm terrified. I don't know anything about babies. What if I break it? What if—" "You won't break it." Clara silenced his panic with a kiss. "You'll be wonderful. I've seen you with Grace with all the children. You're a natural. Grace doesn't break if you hold her wrong. Neither do babies. They're sturdier than they look." Clara pulled back, searching his face. "Tell me honestly, is this good news or bad news?" Josiah was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "My father never wanted me. From the day I was born, I was nothing but a reminder of everything he'd lost. I grew up thinking that's what family was, obligation and resentment and cold duty." He took Clara's face in his hands. "You've shown me different. Your children have shown me different. And now we're going to have a baby. A child who will never have to wonder if their father loves them. Never have to earn a smile or fight for approval. Josiah, I'm going to give this baby everything I never had." His voice was fierce with conviction. Love, security, a father who shows up, who stays. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "This is the best news I've ever received. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this." Clara clung to him, crying again those happy tears she'd thought she'd forgotten how to shed. "We made this together," she whispered. "All of this. The family, the home, the baby. Together." "Together," Josiah agreed. "Always together." They told the children that night at dinner. Thomas's reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "A baby. Can we name it Thunder or Lightning or—" "We're not naming the baby Thunder," Clara said firmly. "What about Storm? Storm is a good name." "Still no." Lily was quieter, more thoughtful. "Will you still love us when the baby comes? The new baby will be yours and Joe's together. We're just—" "You're mine." Josiah's voice cut through Lily's worry. "All 5 of you. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. A new baby doesn't change that." "Promise. I promise." Josiah reached across the table to take Lily's hand. "You're my daughter, Lily. Just like Emma and Grace. Your brothers are my sons. This family doesn't divide, it multiplies." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded, squeezing his hand tight. Grace, predictably, was most concerned with practical matters. "Where will the baby sleep? Not in my bed. My bed is mine." "The baby will have its own bed," Clara assured her. "Good. Babies are loud. I don't want loud in my bed." Henry had been silent throughout the announcement. Clara watched him worried. He'd come so far in accepting Josiah, but this was different. A new baby meant a new family dynamic. A new child that would be Josiah's in ways that William's children never could be. "Henry," she prompted gently, "what do you think?" Henry looked at his mother, then at Josiah, then at his siblings, watching him with anxious eyes. "I think," he said slowly, "that Pa would be glad. He always wanted a big family. He used to say 5 wasn't enough, that we needed a whole baseball team. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. This gets us closer. Clara felt tears threaten again. Oh, Henry. Besides, he continued, his voice stronger now, the baby's going to need someone to teach it things. How to ride. How to build stuff. He looked at Josiah. How to flip pancakes. I could use the help, Josiah said quietly. Henry nodded once. Then I'm in. The baby was born on December 23rd, as snow fell softly outside the window. It was a boy, 7 pounds 4 ounces, with a healthy set of lungs that he exercised vigorously from the moment he entered the world. He had Josiah's dark hair and Clara's gray-blue eyes, a perfect blend of the two people who'd created him. They named him William Samuel Blackwood. William for the man who'd loved Clara first, who'd given her 5 beautiful children and died too young. Samuel for the deputy who'd risked everything to help save them, who'd become a trusted friend. Hello, little one, Clara whispered, holding her newborn son for the first time. Welcome to our family. Josiah stood beside the bed, his face wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. He's beautiful. He looks like you. Poor kid. Clara laughed, exhausted and elated and overwhelmed with love. He's perfect, just like his father. The children filed in one by one to meet their new brother. Emma held him with practiced ease, cooing softly. Henry studied the baby's tiny fingers with wondering eyes. Lily sang a lullaby their father had taught her. Thomas declared that William was pretty okay for something so small and wrinkly. And Grace climbed onto the bed, curled up against Clara's side, and announced that the baby was hers, and she was going to keep him forever. That night, with the house finally quiet, and the children finally asleep, Clara lay in bed with William nestled between her and Josiah. 1 year ago, she said softly, I was standing on your porch in a blizzard, with nothing but 17 cents and 5 starving children. I remember. You asked me to marry you by midnight. I thought you were insane. I was insane. Josiah traced his finger along William's tiny cheek. But it was the best kind of insanity. The best kind, Clara agreed. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd said no? Clara considered the question. Sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I imagine myself walking back into that storm with the children. I imagine us freezing to death in some snowdrift, or ending up in some workhouse, or... She shook her head. But then I look at this. She gestured at the room, the house, the sleeping baby between them. I look at everything we've built, and I can't imagine anything else. Can't imagine being anywhere else. Can't imagine loving anyone else. Josiah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, When I made that proposition, I thought I was using you. Finding a solution to a legal problem. I never expected. What? This. His voice was rough with emotion. You, everything you've given me. I was so empty, Clara. So broken. I'd convinced myself that empty was better than vulnerable, that broken couldn't be fixed. And now I know better. He leaned over the baby to kiss her soft and sweet. You fixed me. Your children fixed me. This family fixed me. We fixed each other, Clara corrected. That's what family does. The clock on the mantel chimed midnight, Christmas Day. Clara smiled, remembering another midnight, another impossible choice. Remembering the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become. Merry Christmas, Josiah. Merry Christmas, Clara. They lay together in the darkness, their newest child sleeping peacefully between them. Their other children dreaming in rooms down the hall. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the world in white. Inside, the fire burned warm and steady, and the walls of the old house held them safe from the cold. Clara thought about everything they'd survived, the blizzard, Thorn, the fear and the violence, and the moments when hope seemed impossible. She thought about William, her first husband, whose death had set her on this path. She thought about her children who'd grown and changed and found their way into Josiah's heart. And she thought about the man lying beside her, the scarred rancher who'd asked a stranger to marry him by sunset, who'd learned to be a father, a partner, a husband, who'd discovered that his frozen heart could still beat, could still love, could still open to joy. They'd started as strangers, bound by desperation. They'd become a family forged by choice. Morning would bring presents and laughter and children's voices filling the house. It would bring a new year full of new challenges and new joys. It would bring the ordinary magic of life on the frontier, hard work and honest love, and the simple miracle of waking up beside someone who'd chosen to stay. But for now, in the quiet darkness of Christmas morning, Clara let herself feel the fullness of her blessings. A healthy baby, happy children, a husband who loved her, a home. She'd walked through a blizzard with nothing but hope and desperation. She'd found everything. And as sleep finally claimed her, Clara Blackwood understood with perfect clarity that sometimes the greatest journeys begin with a single, impossible yes, and end in the arms of someone you never knew you were searching for. She'd asked a cowboy for work, and he'd asked her to marry him by midnight. She'd said yes, and that single word had given her everything.